What is up, everybody? It is me, DevilNeverCry, and this is a crash course beginner's guide to Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition. As always, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with anything and everything DMC. With that out of the way, let's just dive right into what this video is going to be. So I'll be going over some basic things that you should probably know when you're playing this game. I'll go through a mission, and then I'll talk about the basic systems of the game so that you guys are all well aware of what is going on with this fantastic game. First off, I like to play this game with turbo mode enabled. It's off in the options here, as you can see. What this means is that the game will run 20% faster than the base speed. This is an exclusive to the special edition. This is purely by choice. You might struggle with it initially if you haven't played this game before, but in the long run, it tends to pay off well. So I'm going to leave that on for the time being. Of course, you're going to be hitting new game, and at first you won't have the option to switch between Virgil or Dante, simply because to unlock Virgil's campaign, you have to beat Dante's. That's your incentive for getting through the game, I guess you could say. Obviously, you're going to want the tutorial on, especially for a first time playthrough. This tends to be the same for most games these days. And then you're going to have no option for difficulty here, because the only way to unlock easy mode is either by dying a bunch of times in normal mode, or by beating normal mode in general. It will automatically unlock easy mode. The cool thing about this is that if you do happen to struggle on normal mode, then you can go and swap over to easy mode, and then perhaps once you've gotten better or you feel more confident, you can swap back to normal mode, and you'll be able to do that by the mission select menu, which we'll see in just a moment. This is a big one that you're probably going to want to pay attention to, and that is the orb system here. So, gold and yellow orbs, once you pick one, you'll be locked into it for the remainder of that save file, and you'll never be able to switch, so it's probably worth listening and knowing what exactly they are. If you pick gold mode, or gold orb mode, this essentially means that you'll have an infinite amount of restarts at checkpoint if you die. If you happen to have a gold orb on you whilst you die, you'll instantly revive the moment that you died with a full health bar, full devil trigger bar, and the sort of state of the game will be as if you didn't die. So if you've damaged an enemy, that damage will stay. If you've cleared out a room, that room will stay cleared, things like that. Yellow is completely on the other side. If you die on yellow mode and you have no yellow orbs, you don't get a restart at checkpoint. You have to restart the entire mission. If you do have yellow orbs on you, the yellow orbs act as the restart at checkpoint system. So the yellow orb mode is a lot more punishing. You have a finite amount of restarts. You have to buy the restarts essentially, or find the yellow orbs around. So I would always recommend playing with gold, simply because it's just more modern. Yellow is more like DMC 1, where if you didn't have any yellow orbs, you had to restart the mission. But to be honest, the missions in this game aren't super long, so if you do go for it, it's going to be a minor inconvenience at best. This is another big sort of option that is exclusive to the Switch at the moment, and it is the choice between the original game or the Freestyle game, I guess you could say. So it's as it states, you can play the game as intended when it launched all those years ago, 15 years ago in fact, using the usual style and weapon changing configuration. What this means is that there is no on-the-fly style switching, and you're locked for 2 melee weapons and 2 firearms that you can take into any mission. You'll be able to change the style and the weapons you take into a mission at the start of a mission, or at certain locations and divinity statues that you find throughout the game. Freestyle mode, on the other hand, essentially means that you're going to be able to switch styles on the fly, which again I'll go into what exactly styles and weapons and stuff are in the game later on in this video, but you'll essentially be able to switch between all of them on the fly, and you'll be able to switch between every single firearm and melee weapon all at once, so you'll eventually have access to 5 melee weapons and 5 firearms all at once. It can be a bit overwhelming for a newcomer, I guess you could say, but all in all, Freestyle mode is definitely worth playing, hands down for sure, over the original. You get used to it after a while. So then you're taken into this menu, which is not the mission menu that I'll be using for the purposes of demonstration. So if I go and load my standard save file here, we're going to hop into a mission, and we'll discuss some of the systems in the game, some that you may see or might have some questions about. Skip the cutscenes, don't want to spoil you guys. So this is the mission start screen. You're obviously going to have the mission start option, and then you're going to have the option to customize. If you're playing in the freestyle mode, you don't have to worry about the first two here, the style or equip locations. I do want to talk about the items in this game though very quickly. As you can see, these are all items that you're going to be able to purchase. Some of these you might be able to find actually in game if you look hard enough. You're going to have your vital stars, which act as health regens. You can pop one of these and you'll regain a set amount of health. Devil Star is quite different in that you don't have the option between a small or large version of them. It will just automatically fill your devil trigger to its fullest. Holy water is as it says. You're fighting demons in this game, so chucking some holy water on them probably isn't going to make them too happy. Blue orbs are going to act as permanent health upgrades, purple orbs are going to act as permanent devil trigger upgrades, and gold orbs are essentially, as I previously mentioned, instant revives. Down there some of you might see the blue orb symbol with 0 out of 4. You can find blue orb fragments in this game if you look hard enough, through the environment or through secret missions, and essentially when you collect 4 of them, they'll provide 1 full blue orb, which as we know is a permanent health upgrade. Then you're going to have the actions menu. This is where you can buy moves for weapons. Guns, this is where you're going to be able to upgrade the damage output of your weapons, and that is essentially the customization menu in a nutshell. Let's just dive right into a mission, and we'll go into some combat here, and then I'll sort of be discussing what exactly it is that I'm doing. So as you can see, once I'm killing these enemies, they're dropping red orbs. Red orbs in this game act as the currency for everything, whether it is buying items, buying attacks, everything is done through the red orb currency, and the way to get red orbs is simply by killing demons. You can see there in the top right hand corner I have a style bar. It's currently on blast. The better you do at combat, the higher that gauge will go, and whenever you kill enemies, the higher the style bar is, the higher the rank, the more red orbs they will drop. So that was just a little snippet of gameplay there. I wasn't really doing anything too special, trying to keep my coherence as I spoke there. So now we're going to go over the style menu, or the style system, weapon switching, things like that, and we're going to kick it off with obviously style. As you can see in the UI up over there, the green is my health bar, those little nodules underneath the health bar are my devil trigger, and then up there right above the UI you're going to see it says SWORDMASTER. I'm playing in freestyle mode, so that is the current style that I have equipped. The styles essentially act as a modifier for the A button on the Switch, or the circle button on the PlayStation, or the B button on the Xbox, and basically depending on what style you have, the function of that button will change. So for example in TRICKSTER, which is up on the D-pad here, tapping the A button acts as a dash. The entirety of the TRICKSTER style is all about getting out of harm's way, doing cool things like running up on walls and stuff. SWORDMASTER is all about getting the most out of your melee weapons, so it adds extra attacks, extra functions, you'll be able to attack in midair, things like that. I'm not going to be going too in depth in what these systems do, mainly because I think part of the fun of this game is figuring out what things do for yourself. Moving on to the Royal Guard, this acts as a guard button. If you have perfect timing, and I do mean frame perfect timing, you can go through this entire game blocking every single attack and doing almost no damage. In fact, you can actually turn the damage enemies do to you around on them, using their own power to destroy them. It's also got other things, other properties, such as cancelling recovery frames if you're fast enough, and people tend to use it for lots of advanced things. It's essentially fun to use. Last but not least is obviously Gunslinger. This is, as the name implies, a style that is focused on your firearms, so you'll be able to do all sorts of cool things with your firearms. There are a few more styles that I won't be talking about simply because I don't want to spoil things for newcomers, but do be on the lookout for some other styles, and do be sure to get stuck in with the styles because they are quite fun, especially when you swap them on the fly and start doing all sorts of crazy things. The next thing I want to talk about is weapon switching. So, as I previously mentioned with the Freestyle, you're going to be able to switch between 5 different melee weapons and 5 different firearms. If you play this on original, you'll only have the choice of swapping between 2 melee weapons of your choice, which again is where the Freestyle mode comes into play. You can switch between everything. Switching between the melee weapons is done using the ZR button or the right trigger, and switching between firearms is done through the ZL button or the ZL, the left trigger, sorry. And as you can see there, I'm sort of swapping through them, and it's interesting because it can be a little bit overwhelming for people at times because you kind of have to remember, oh, I want to get to a certain weapon, oh, that's like 3 taps away, or getting back to this one is another 3 taps, and it can be overwhelming because you do have to commit the weapon locations to memory, and unfortunately it's not like DMC 4 or 5, 5 actually, where you can just pick a loadout, or you can take in a set amount. Now it's either all or nothing in the Freestyle mode. You're not given a choice of what you can and can't take. Again, it works the same way for the firearms here. One of the cool things they've done with this radial menu is that if you hold down one of the one of the triggers, you'll be able to use the right thumbstick to essentially pick what you want. It is a little slow and it can feel a little clunky, but for newcomers this is probably the best way instead of having to mash the trigger button to get to what they want. And you can still move whilst using the radial menu, so it's not as if you're leaving yourself vulnerable to danger. If you wanted to, you could probably hold down both of the triggers and pick whichever weapon you sort of wanted to swap to all together all at once. The next thing that I kind of want to talk about, which you guys might have seen whilst I was fighting there, is a little bit of the old camera manipulation. So enemies in this game and in all of the Devil May Cry games will not start an attack animation unless they are on camera. So if you do want to give yourself a little bit of a breather, chuck yourself in a corner and move the camera. Hopefully, providing there are no enemies on screen, you'll be able to sort of think about what it is you want to do, or perhaps fire away at some enemies. Do be careful though that enemies will try their hardest to get on screen, and if they do, rest assured they'll start an attack animation. The reason that the game does this is so that you don't feel like you've been blindsided by a cheap hit that you never saw coming. If you do end up getting hit, you definitely had the chance to have at least seen it and preemptively dodged. The next thing I do want to talk about is the taunt button. In this game, the minus button, or the select button, or the options button, can be used as a taunt button. Essentially what this does is it raises your devil trigger by, I believe, 1.5 of those nodules, so 1.5, and it's obviously also stylish, you know, flexing on an enemy, destroying them and then hitting them with a taunt is always fun to do. The animation and the line that Dante says varies depending on your style on the style bar, so if you're at a higher style you get a much more flashy taunt and a much more cocky sort of line out of Dante. Again, do be careful though, because you can be knocked out of this animation and hit if you are not careful. So sometimes, you know, arrogance does lead to your downfall. The next thing that I kind of want to talk about, which is, I guess you could say, a little known sort of fact about this game, is the Devil Trigger Flux, or the Devil Trigger Explosion. As you can see in the top left there, my Devil Trigger bar is glowing because I'm holding the Devil Trigger button. What this does is it allows you to charge an area of effect attack that is a 360-degree attack that goes around Dante that does an insane amount of damage. If you have a full Devil Trigger bar, it does a lot of damage. It will one-shot the majority of enemies. Of course, it depends on the difficulty you're on, but it does a substantial amount of damage. And once you let go of that button, boom, you get this 360-degree area of effect attack. Of course, it is weaker the less Devil Trigger you currently have, which is probably for the best. So do be sure to make sure your Devil Trigger bar is full, make sure that you've bought as many of the purple orbs as possible, as that will increase the damage output altogether. The last thing that I do want to talk about is jump cancelling, which I'll try and give you a small demonstration of here if I can. Unfortunately, these enemies don't have too much health. That's the issue. Let me switch to a weapon that isn't. You could kind of see it there. So essentially what this does is it allows you to continuously chain a bunch of aerial moves, and you're able to actually jump off enemies. Enemies essentially act as the ground of this game, so when your feet touch them, you can jump off of them. You'll be able to reset the amount of moves you can do in midair, so you can double jump and then hop off an enemy and double jump again, over and over and over. Obviously people like to use attacks on enemies, as you can see, and one of the easiest things to jump cancel is the Beowulf, as you kind of saw there. This essentially allows you to chain a staggering amount of damage over and over and over, provided that you're good enough at doing so. The window is fairly tight for jump cancelling, and if you want a super in-depth guide on it, Broly 2012 actually did a fairly in-depth guide. I'll leave a link in the description down to that guide there. He goes over it and gives more examples of it. That is a fairly old video now that I think about it, but hey, if you can't beat him, join him. So that is going to be it for the gameplay portion. Next up, we'll move on to the end ranking screen. Right, so we are back at the end of a mission here that I quickly just did, and I want to break down what the mission clear or the mission ranking screen is. So you have an overall Devil Hunter rank there that ranges from rank D all the way rank to S or SS. And that rank is an amalgamation of other little ranks that you get, as you can see there on the left hand side. Time, orbs, stylish points, damage and items used are all ranked. Obviously you want to be fast when you're completing a mission. Not going to happen the first time through, as you like to take your time. I certainly did, or I certainly do when I'm playing a game for the first time. Then you're ranked on the orbs that you get throughout the level. Obviously you get orbs from beating enemies. The higher your style rank when you beat an enemy, the more orbs they give out. There's also orbs to find in the environment. There's lots of destructible things to hit, and they'll be scattered around the environment, so do be on the lookout for them if you want a higher orb rank. Stylish points is obviously ranked as well. You want to vary things up, you want to mix things up, and provided that you do both of those, your stylish points will be ranked at a higher rank than the B that I've got there. Again, I tried to just get through this to stop making excuses, Devil, just get on to the next thing. So then you have damage there, which is ranked as well, which is basically the damage that you take as a player. The more damage you take, the lower that rank gets. I didn't take all too much damage there, but because this is an easy mission, I wasn't ranked all too good there, which is why I got a C. And then of course, items used, I have an S rank there. Depends on what items you use in a level. If you use no items, then it's an automatic S for the items used category. Items are obviously ranked in and of themselves, so if you use a small vital star, you'll be penalized less than if you were to use a large vital star or a gold orb or revive essentially. And then all of those are essentially added up to give you your final ranking, which as you can see there, I got an A. So you have a rank bonus, so the higher your rank, the more orbs you get as a bonus, and then sometimes there'll also be a boss bonus if you fought a boss in the level. But that is essentially going to wrap things up for Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition in terms of a beginner's guide. I try to go over as many things as possible, try to keep things as basic as possible. If there's anything else you guys want me to cover, do let me know down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this game. I certainly did. It is one of my favorites. It is the beginning of the Sons of Sparda saga, and it kind of sets things in motion for the rest of the series. So with all of that said and done, people, it has been me, DevilNeverCry. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and as always, I'll see you all next video.